All right, here I'm going to go over some commonly missed questions on two Khan Academies. So first it says solve for x, and they want us to enter our answers. There's two answers. They just want you to put the smaller one here and the bigger one here. And then it's giving us an equation. They want to know what x is, and it's telling us that this times this equals 0. Remember, if you multiply numbers together and the answer is 0, then one or both of those numbers has to be 0. So either this 2x plus 4 equals 0, or the 3x minus 2 equals 0. And that's what I'm walking you through doing on this template on the right. First, write down the question, and then split it up. Either 2x plus 4 equals 0, or the 3x minus 2 equals 0. Now, we just need to solve each of these equations. Remember, when you're solving equations, first undo what's added or subtracted to that variable. So on the one on the left, I'm first going to undo this adding 4 by subtracting 4 from both sides. And then I'm going to undo this multiplying by 2 by dividing both sides by 2. So one of my answers is x equals negative 2. Now for the one on the right, again, always undo what's added or subtracted from the variable first. So to undo the minus 2, I add 2 to both sides. And then to undo the multiplying by 3, I divide both sides by 3. So my two answers are x equals negative 2 and x equals 2/3. So the one that is smaller is the negative number. So I would put x equals negative 2 here, and then x equals 2/3 here. Let's try another. So same thing, solve for x, and they're multiplying. This times this equals 0. So either this equals 0 or this equals 0. So I'm going to split that up into two equations. For the one on the left, I'm going to first undo this minus 7 by adding 7 to both sides. And for the one on the right, I'm first going to undo the subtracting 2 by adding 2 to both sides. And then what do I do at this point to move this negative 4? Do I add 4? No, this is negative 4 multiplied by x. So I'm going to divide both sides by negative 4. What's the answer for this one on the right? 2 divided by negative 4. So it's a positive divided by a negative, so the answer is going to be negative. So negative 2/4. Can I simplify that fraction? Yeah, that's the same as negative 1/2. So these are our two answers. Which one is smaller? The negative. So I'm going to put the negative 1/2 in the first box and the 7 in the second box. This one looks a little different. It says find the zeros for this function. Notice it's not something that very obviously you can use the zero product property, but notice we are multiplying this times this. The first step is to change the function notation to a 0, because we want to know what is x when the function is 0, when y is 0. Now we can use the zero product property, because this times this is 0. So either x minus 2 equals 0, or 3x plus 3 equals 0. And then you just solve each of these equations. And if you need to pause and take a look at how I solve those equations, you can. Notice for both of them, I always undo what's added or subtracted first, and then I undo the multiplying. And again, when you put your answers in, always put the smallest one in the first box, which smaller numbers are always the negative numbers. And also if you have a negative, if the answer perhaps was negative 4 and negative 1, which one's smaller? The negative 4, because it's further to the left on the number line, further away from 0. This is the other Khan Academy I wanted to go over a couple of questions on. This one, we're also going to use a zero product property, but first we need to factor them. So for this first one, it says solve for x, and it's giving us this polynomial. We need to change this to a multiplication problem. That's what factoring is. Change this to a multiplication problem. Remember, in order to factor it, when there's no number in front of, no coefficient in front of the x squared, we look for two numbers that multiply to be the last term. So multiply to be that 36, and add to be the middle term. So add to be that 12. and actually this is 12x. So what two numbers multiply to give us 36 and add to give us 12? So I like to just come up with a list of different factors, sets of factors that multiply to give me 36. So it could be 1 times 36, or 2 times 18, or 3 times 12, or 4 times 9. Look at these and see if any of them, if you add or subtract them together, can give you 12. I don't see one. Actually, I left a set of factors off. Notice that also 6 times 6 would give me 36. Now do you see it? 6 times 6 is 36, and 6 plus 6 is 12. So those are our two factors. So what goes in our parentheses is x plus 6 and x plus 6. Because the two numbers I'm looking at here that multiply to give me the last number and add to give me the middle are positive 6 and positive 6. Now, if this times this is 0, then one of those equals 0. And notice that they're both the same thing. I could write down x plus 6 equals 0 and x plus 6 equals 0, but they're both the same equation to solve. So you really just have to do it once. So let's solve this equation by subtracting 6 from both sides. And we see that x equals negative 6. Only one answer. Let's try one more. This was also a commonly missed question. Remember, first we need to factor it. We need to change this to a multiplication problem. So then we can use the zero product property to solve it. Always when the first term is x squared with no coefficient, the first number inside of parentheses is going to be x. To find out what goes inside the parentheses with the x's, we want to go through these steps here. We're looking for two numbers that multiply to give us the last term. So multiply to give us negative 90 and add to give us the middle term. There's not a number in front of the x, so what do we assume it is? 1. So this is negative 1. So what two numbers add to be negative 90, or add to be negative 1, and multiply to give us negative 90? So again, come up with a list of factors, a list of sets of numbers that multiply to give us negative 90. Or let's just think of it as 90. So it could be 1 times 90, or 2 times 45, or 3 times 30, or, I'm just going to bust out my calculator. I'm just going to think of, is 4 a factor? When I go 90 divided by 4, nope, that comes out to a decimal. How about 5? 90 divided by 5 is 18. So 5 times 18 gives me 90. How about 6? 90 divided by 6 is 15. So 6 times 15 gives me 90. How about 7? Nope. How about 8? I'm just dividing each of these numbers by 90. 90 divided by 8 gives me a decimal. That's not a factor. How about 9? Yep. 9 times 10 gives me 90. These are all the different numbers, sets of numbers I can multiply to give me 90. Now let's take a look. Do you see any of them when you add them together or subtract them that will give you negative 1? This one right here, 9 and 10. 9 and 10, the difference between 9 and 10 is 1. Which of these has to be negative so that when we add them, we get negative 1? The 10. 9 and negative 10. So I'm going to put plus 9 here and minus 10 here. Now we can use the zero product property to solve it, now that we factor. That was a tough one. So remember, when two numbers multiply to give us 0, then one of those or both of those has to be 0. So either x plus 9 equals 0 or x minus 10 equals 0. And then we just solve those. And then we see that x equals negative 9 or 10. The smaller one is negative 9, the bigger one is 10.